So,
it's recording. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar about upgrading to Galaxy class the Milky Way Enterprise Map. I'm Milan Guenther. I'm one of the two presidents of Intersection Group, which is one of my favorite jobs. I have two others, founder of T-Menu. It's a B2B startup. And some time ago, I also co-founded Enterprise Design Associates, which kind of started this whole enterprise design journey. And I'm super happy to have still and again Annika with me.
thank you. Yes, I'm also really glad to be here and to share some more thinking on the Milky Way and how we are finding our ways to get it more into the edgy world as well. And I'm, as you see on the screen, I'm currently working at Triton, which is a company designing heavy trucks. And I came from the Swedish company Scania in July. So that's a short about me.
Right. So, and this is a webinar by Intersection Group. We are a not-for-profit association. We make Edgy, which is an open source tool for collaborative enterprise design used by architects, designers, consultants, analysts, and so on around the world. We run communities and events like this one. Our next big event is Intersection 26, our 12th conference, which will happen in Montreal for the first time across the pond. We're very excited about that in October. Early October, and we publish things. And this is a webinar that is part of a series that we have this year. The next one is coming up soon with Helge and Wolfgang about the Edgy Sandbox. And what we are talking about today, the Milky Way Enterprise Map, is one of the tools that is currently in the Edgy Sandbox, which means we are reviewing it in order to add it to the official Edgy toolset and standard. And so I'm already saying it now, but also will be repeating it later. This is also an open invitation for anyone who wants to try it, review it, help us make it ready for publication. We also do trainings. The next one coming up is about the Enterprise Scan, which is a little tool to achieve a lot of clarity in a very short time with not a lot of effort. And we also run partnership programs, trainings, and collaborate with enterprises that want to use Edgy as a standard to understand themselves better or each other better and to make more progress and redesign themselves. And also solution providers, by which we mean software vendors, training providers, or consultancies. All right, today we talk about the Milky Way Enterprise Map. We structured this session into three parts. First, we will start with the notion of a geography and what's the purpose of geography? Why should you at all invest in having one? What's the point? And then we will start with reading a Milky Way map and then finish with making a Milky Way map. As always, we have a little bit too much stuff to show. So we will sometimes only briefly show something. And one thing that is maybe important to mention is that sometimes get response, which is what we are using here, is a bit poor in resolution. And since we are showing complex maps, it can be better to just access the document that we are sharing. So I just put the link into the chat. You can click that link and then you get to our Google slides and you can zoom in and look at it in more detail. And of course, we will also send around the recording and the slides afterwards. But let's get started. So, mouse, where are we?
Very relevant question.
It is a relevant question. And you might see we are taking the big picture here. Where are we in this picture? So this is the Milky Way. And sometimes working in enterprises, it feels that way, right? So you have this giant thing, you see a little bit of it, you know you are part of it, you know it's moving, you know it's relevant for your life, but it's hard to tell where you are and what's happening, what's relevant. And so just to tell you, I think we are here. So that where Earth is a rather on the outskirts of this Milky Way. But starting with a situation where this is relevant might be, for example, this situation, Annika.
Yeah, and I think we've all been in this situation. You're in a meeting, people are talking, and somebody's presenting something, and there are a lot of people with different backgrounds and different preconceptions around the table. And after you have, or that person that is talking has sort of finished and, a bit smiling and looking for feedback, the things in the heads of the colleagues are probably somewhat like this. Depending on who you are and what you have, you might be somebody that sees everything in processes and you're figuring out, does this really fit with what we said in the previous ways that we're looking at our main processes? Or another one coming from maybe strategy, written things, the business plans or whatever, is looking into what does this actually mean? And isn't this a bit contradiction to what we said? Are we really going to go and invest maybe in this area or change in this area when we kind of said that we would not, because we would focus on other areas? And then we maybe have a guy from the product portfolio team, and they know that there are no sort of slots available in any change programs until like 2-3 years from now. So whatever ideas we're having now, they're not happening. And the last one could potentially be a bit worried about the latest reorganization and thinking of this from an organizational point of view. And the thing is that none of them are wrong. It's just when they open their mouth and start talking, they will have a very hard time finding common ground. And it is really what I see, and I've seen it many times, the effort that we put in to navigate and calibrate so that we are actually addressing the same things with the starting points is quite substantial. And it could be that we're not really finding common ground until the meeting is over. So if we look at the next section in this meeting, the guy presents himself and he says, I come from Fiumicino near Rome in Italy. And here something else happens in our head, because we have a shared model. So depending on who you are, maybe you've been there or you've never been to Europe, but you most likely have some kind of idea of what Italy is. And if you know your way around Europe, you would kind of know that Rome is in the middle somewhere on the boot. And if you know your way around Rome, you would know maybe more about and start asking for certain things at this place where maybe you've been walking the canals. So there is something here. We have a shared model and we have practiced it, and we have agreed upon this model of looking at the world and having these dimensions. So what if this could be something to bring with us into other contexts? So what do you say?
Yeah, so this model that we just saw is not actually given by any higher higher power. It is, as you said, it's agreed upon. And so if you look at another model of the same thing, suddenly it's much harder to find our way, right? So this is the same thing. We are looking at the world just from a different angle, from upside down. And now if I ask you, okay, where is Rome? It's not that easy. I can make life a little bit easier by pointing out what water is and what countries are, right? With color coding. Yeah, you're welcome. But it's still, it's here, right? So it's not that easy just because we are not familiar with this way to look at the world. But it's not in any way wrong. It's just not what we agreed upon as a standard. And why we agreed upon the other map as a standard is maybe more a question of history, and whether that's fair and whether that's a good map. It's a different story. But why should we use maps in the first place? And also, what is a map? So in enterprises, a lot of things are being called maps. Like if you have a stakeholder map, or you have a customer journey map, right? So are they actually maps? And Simon Wortley, we stole this from him. There's a link that you can click if you look into the slides to see him talk about this. he says many of these things are actually not maps. And one of his examples is this SWOT diagram, where he says, well, is this a good, like if you are Greece and the Persians are coming, is this a good way to prepare? Say, strength, we have a well-trained, Greek army, maybe not so. We have a well-trained Spartan army. They're quite motivated. Opportunities, we could get rid of the Persians, maybe even the Spartans. Threats, the Persians might get rid of us. Or would it maybe be better to look at where are they coming from? What does the terrain look like? How can we move to intercept them? And what could be our strategy in terms of movement on the map with the material that we have to formulate a response to this threat? And he basically says, so a real map in the way that we are talking about today has a position, has a direction, has an anchor. And when you move something from one place to the other, it has meaning. It's not just a different drawer or a different category in a graph. And so this is important for a map like the Milky Way map, because this is exactly what we are trying to establish when we try to bring something like the principles of a geographical map to something that is not a planet or a planet surface, like an enterprise. So how can we do that? How can we map an enterprise? How can we map something as fuzzy and difficult to understand and to observe and to know in detail, and as big and complex as an enterprise? How can we kind of find which elements are relevant, which ones are maybe close to us, which ones are further away, what's their relation, what's the dynamics between them, and how can we visually represent that? And we thought that maybe the best way to start this is to show you a map, a Milky Way map, that is actually in use, in productive use for many years in a large organization.
Yes, and this is an older version, but still something that we have been improving on. And it is a map that shows how Scania is creating value in terms of solution development, and then is able to offer exactly that, sort of the left side. And then on the right side, we are delivering these solutions that has been developed to the customers through a sales process. And of course, we need to produce all the trucks, and we also need to make sure that the trucks are functional and supported and able to be serviced when needed. And this was a super fast introduction to this map. But what we also did in this example was that we were looking at the customer journey, the actual things that an owner of a truck or a fleet manager of somebody that owns a fleet might want to do. Those are the red things that are marked to the left, to the right there. And then we said, what if we were to think that we want to do this experience different? What would need to change in terms of ways of working and ways of thinking to drive that change? And then, of course, we need to move ourselves into more what are the things that we do as a company in the sort of daily operations. Would our warehouse or where services depots work in a different way? But we might also need to look at how have we developed the product that we are offering to these customers, and if we want to change the experience, what do we need to change? In this example, I think there had to do with more sustainability aspects of things, maybe being able to see more sort of things that weren't as important a couple of years ago compared to what we see the market asking for right now. So this way of taking an external view in the red notes and moving ourselves into our enterprise system, and exactly like somebody in Borgen, product service system, and even a connection on how we create solutions and services that now map better to this changing environment that the customers are acting in. So, and this map that you're seeing is covering everything that Scania as a company are doing on a high level, both development and also this sort of more order-driven flows. And it is for a discussion purpose and for a way of understanding how things that are not so close to each other actually impact each other. And see what would something with development need to be paying more attention to, given the changes in how the products are perceived. I mean, I can talk very lengthily about these models, but it's just one example of how we do it. We just had a town hall today where I had a paper version of this map, and we were talking and describing how the changes within the trading group will impact how we work together, and also moving shifts from a more one brand at a time perspective into a more group perspective, where we have more brands than the Scania brand benefiting from a development organization. So this is in use, and it's really something that can how should I sort of not foster, but sort of help discussions in this very complex and big situations where the dependencies are not so easy to see on the normal type of pictures, or the normal type of diagrams that you would have with only capabilities or only customer journeys or information or application maps or something. So this is one example. I think if you take the next one, this is a way of zooming in for sort of, we're taking a part of the development process, and then we're looking at, in this case, the concept development, or explore and analyze requirement, which in other words could be concept development. And then we look at that loop, and the one to the next is describe and verify requirements. This is more of a test loop when we have actually done some real development and we need to do some testing. So this is zooming into a section and try to figure out more about the dependencies and how we would like things to be connected. And my experience is that when you put some effort into guiding people into these types of maps, the dialogue and the discussions you can get are so much richer when we allow ourselves to be more open with icons representing capabilities in this case. And also you see the arrows. In this way of mapping, the arrows are as important as the capabilities or the icons, because it has to do with how the dynamics between these things are meant to be understood. And if you have loops, or if it's a one-way street, depending on how we design the system. So these are two examples of how we are using this in cases of understanding, the first example, and here this is more of bringing people to the table and understanding how this setup actually works, and get it in a richer way. So shortly about how we use them and what this could be, yeah, you will add something, Milan.
Yeah, and you might have seen the color code used on the first example. So this is where Edgy comes in, right? So everything that is blue in the Scania map is actually, in Edgy terms, responding to the architecture question, which is basically what's going on, right? How are we operating? What can we do together? And how are things and information and work, how is everything, how is collaboration flowing between capabilities? And you see, even visually, because you have the map basically shows, okay, what is going on again and again. Then you have these capabilities and you have these processes. You see basically how the enterprise is piped up and works as a system to deliver something to these people here, which is where the experience dimension comes in. So the journey of those people, planning rides, driving actually trucks, buying them, and so on. And then, of course, we could have, like we have here, some purposes where we might want to change something, or we want to pursue a certain goal. So rather responding to this question, why do we exist? Who are we? What matters to us? What does success of this enterprise mean for us? Or what's the role in people's lives? And so this is how you combine the Milky Way map, which is historically mostly a capability map, with the full scope of Edgy. by just making your map respond to these questions. And so the way we are doing that is with I would say, a little less beautiful map.
You don't have my Frederick.
Exactly. We don't have Frederick, who created the icons for the Scania version. But this is just an example for intersection railways, which is the kind of fake enterprise that we are using at Intersection Group to show you how Edgy works. And you see it's really the same structure. So we have in the middle what we call the core story. So what are we doing again and again? And the purposes that we are pursuing as an enterprise as we loop through this cycle, and with a little break at the bottom where we see where we basically take a pause and do things that are rather on a non-operational more preparation and governance kind of mode, and then launch ourselves into the next cycle. And if you look at this map also, you see that, well, we have a lot of stuff going on here where we build our stations, we plan our resources, we count our assets, we come up with budgets, we build and maintain tracks, we develop products. A lot of stuff going on here. Much less stuff going on here, where we learn and develop and invest into new things. That might be maybe because this part was more important when we made the map. And this wasn't that important yet. But we still map it because it's part of the enterprise and it might be important in some way and at some point. And then, of course, we have in red, we have our passenger, our customer who's dreaming of far away, gets some trip ideas, planning with friends, reviewing times and rules, booking a ticket, and so on. So we have the customer journey basically snaking around. And so we, on this map, if you can read it, you see there's a cycle, there are moments where we prepare together. There are moments where we deliver and interact with customers, where there are moments where we learn what happened, what can we change, what can we improve. There are moments where we manage the whole thing. And you don't necessarily have to understand, the whole map, everything that's going on in order to understand roughly, so if it's here, it means, okay, we are more beginning to plan something. If it's here, we are really close to the customer. So making these connections intuitive, or this proximity, this affinity mapping intuitive by positioning things on the map. And it's not a science, right? You can't really calculate an exact coordinate for any of these elements, but it should make sense when you look at the map, more or less that this element is in that place because other elements that are close to it are in some way relevant or happening in parallel.
And the interesting things that happens once you have this and establish this, you see that people are starting to relate to things that is either before or after or far away or needs to. It's this. We're giving a spatial way of thinking on something that has most of the times been very abstract. So this is a way of making it tangible and possible to touch and feel and scribble on, and still be, that was my share, and still be consistent when it comes to geography. So we're not jumping around. We're really being thoughtful on what we put where, depending on how they're connected.
Yeah, and ideally, after you showed and exposed people to the map a few times, and especially if you managed, like in Scania's case, to make it just, I would say, it has some quality of a, where's Waldo kind of picture, because of the icons, because of the visual style, because of the complexity. In this case, I think it's a good thing because it's a rich picture, right? It's something that invites you to discover things about the enterprise, to see where are your colleagues, where are other people that you maybe interact with, what do you not know about certain areas of the map, who might you want to contact in order to learn more about that, and what kind of interconnections might you not be even aware of, but they might be relevant to you, which is when you basically start plotting things on the map, similar to plotting a route from A to B on a geographical map. If you use Google Maps, here we can plot, we introduce a new brand, which is called Night Express, which is delivering a product called Night Train. What do we need to do to make this happen? in this case, one specific question, which is we want to get some specific meal that you pre-order for your breakfast onto the train. This involves resource management, operational planning. We have to design this product. We have to find local partnerships, which is a purpose here, build trusted partnerships. We want it to be sustainable. What do we need to do? What capabilities are involved? What journey steps are involved? And which other things do we not highlight, like have in the background, but they provide context, right? So you see how this product comes together, how it is delivered, how it in the end ends up on the train, in the train restaurant. Who is doing this? Are the customer experience team here, the digital team here? And so the map becomes really a geographical reference for something like this, like a path, which traditionally you would maybe put into a service blueprint or a journey map or a product portfolio or a capability map or a process map, or maybe all of them, but you can't see them together, right? And this is what the geography does. And we know the Milky Way is not alone, right? None of these maps are used in isolation. So here's just some overview of edgy typical maps that people use edgy for: ecosystem maps, business model canvases, product portfolios, experience maps, brand architectures, vision, org charts, capability maps, process maps. And we think that you can basically tie all of them to the Milky Way and keep them in sync and basically decide what situations can really benefit from this shared geography, so that it's easier for people to find their way and visually locate elements and also translate from one element to another, from one facet to another, from one challenge to another, but using the same geographic reference, the same positioning. And we just want to show you a few examples for that. Like this one.
Yeah, this is a version that is showing how you can look at where do we put our money. Either you think of investments going forward, or you think of investments being done based upon the budget that you got. So we can say that a number of the main things that this enterprise currently is investing in is in the product development part, where we create new offerings. You can see 60 and 50, that is sort of representing investments. And then you can see that there are some things happening in the sort of introduction, and there's something happening where probably through sales, and there's also something happening during, maybe we are improving this, we need to sort of improve the customer journey somehow, or improve the internal capabilities that is supporting the customer journey. And then there's apparently also something with facility management going on. So this is sort of a way of describing where are we spending our money. And if we then take the next one, a layer on this one, this could be things that we have said we want to prioritize in any of the, I don't know, maybe strategic documents, or pointing out things that really need to be taken care of. And there's always an interesting thing: do we invest in the areas that we actually point out as important, or are there other reasons for us not investing, or investing in areas that were not prioritized? And if you see the corner up to the left, this is a very sort of a situation that I've been seeing both by myself in a couple of situations where I did this as a consultant. We're investing or driving so many change initiatives towards one area, but we're not really seeing them because they come from different teams. Maybe there's one from the customer relationship team. There's one from the, I don't know, app team. There is one from, there's just, they're identified and driven from different angles of the enterprise, and we're not really able to see through why things are so slow and nothing moves. But when you depict it like this, it's pretty obvious that apparently this initial customer experience customer contact there was really important, and there were a lot of people wanting to improve that. Maybe a prioritization would be good here. So this is sort of a simple example of how you can combine things. Another thing that is also always very interesting is to see how do you design your organization in order for for you to be as fit as possible for supporting these capabilities or these situations. And usually, at least my experience is that when you are on the right side of this one, there is a product development and strategic planning and things may be done in the headquarters. The teams are not that big, but as you move over to the top level and also through to the delivery following the customer journey, then things get more distributed. You might have local sales organizations or local DevOps supporting closer to the actual delivery of the services. So this way of having an org chart depict on this diagram has also shown to be interesting, and then start to think, what are the reasons for having this or this type of organization in the different sectors of the map? And I've never seen a situation where it's the same structure all along, because the different sectors have different sort of ways of operating that might drive towards a central organization or a more distributed one. So that's an example as well. And if we move on to a bit more of an architecture and sort of where you're looking at the main process steps within the capabilities and also what systems or applications are supporting, this is an example of this. So green ones are great, yellow ones might need some attention, and the red ones definitely need some attention. And if we take the next click on this one, then we can move ourselves into where are the different sort of capabilities supported in a good way or not so good, or in a bad way that needs to move. So this is also a way of working with status on expected behaviors and how we can make this better. These are usually, once you have the map, fairly quickly scribbled in the first rounds, and then of course you need to agree what's good and what's not and so on. But having these type of overviews and then doing some kind of scoring to understand where do we need to pay more attention is usually a very good way, a bit like a heat map kind of thinking. And then the last one is something that I'm currently, do you want to add something?
Just that, in my experience, an application architecture diagram, if you show that to, for example, someone working on the product or experience design side, they won't understand what's going on. But if you locate it on the Milky Way and they know the Milky Way, they're like, yeah, so this is the apps we are using when we are doing this, and this means for my product and my experience this and that. Yeah. And this is exactly how it works. It's just something I wanted to add from my experience of using it.
Yeah, but that's really good. And then the last one in this sort of examples is something that I'm currently working quite a lot with, even though we are not, in my case, working with this sort of heat maps because it's a bit more structured, or it's done in another way. But the idea here is to be able to show how things are working today. And then as we move on towards 27 and 28, how we expect the capabilities to shift. And they're not shifting without any sort of randomly. They're, of course, shifting based upon the investments that we're doing. And that is, of course, if we do this properly, which is really hard, give sort of the results of investments done or initiatives done. So this way of translating from a status on a current state and then wanted state, and then move that into how do we know where we need to put in effort. And if we expand this can of course be roadmaps and things, but just for the sake of logic, we left it with where we, in the little diagram below, where we put the most effort into in the map. So you can see top left is an area we will start to invest in already from today to 27 to make this red one yellow. And then we want to move on to prioritize the more customer-facing parts to make that green all the way. And then that drives more investments in both the top left and top right section of this one. And we can also say that in the bottom right, we're going from green to yellow. We're accepting a decrease in the expectations because we want to shift the focus towards more external facing things. So this way of tying state to investments and sort of initiatives, and then to expected change is something that I'm working quite a lot with in the current sort of my current position. And we have, of course, more detailed things than just pluses or minuses. We have this sort of different initiatives, and the context is pretty big, but the same logic applies. And to me, it has to do with transparency. It has to do with translating and making people understand can I expect if I work in any of these areas. I mean, if I work in the bottom right one and I'm concerned about the red one, the red ability to interact with suppliers or whatever that could be, I see that is not moving in the next coming 3 years. So I don't know, maybe change jobs or just accept fact and try to do the best with the resources I have. So it has to do with expectation management, you could say. So this is another thing that I hope that we also can show more about how we go about moving from insight to action and into really driving change in this type of maps. So, so now we have been giving you some stuff on why is this interesting and why could this be something that is worth the effort. Now we move into a bit more on how do you do this?
And it's easier than you think.
It is, and you do not need to sort of start with the ambition level of the Scania examples that I had. But basically, what you need to do is to find the core, the basis of the geography, which is in essence is this enterprise core story. What is it that we do as an enterprise over and over again? So in this case, we have this little company, and they have some kind of product development, idea, innovation, and then they work with sort of producing that or preparing that. And the next step is when they meet the customers, they make agreements, and the next one is they ship the products so that the customers can start using them. And the last one is to capture or make payments and make sure that we also pay our suppliers in the right way. And then we have the phase of analyzing, figuring out how does this work? And are we to do the same thing again, or should we improve our products or whatever? So this is basically the core geography, but sort of defined by a story that takes us through the main steps of what we as a business do over and over again. So it's really something that is fairly tangible, and you can find traces of it in process maps, in capability maps, definitely in your customer journeys, because they will be the ones knowing whether you do the customer agreements before you deliver or if you pay before, those type of things. So this is pretty easy way to start finding your story. And then if we move on to how you would do this, you can add who are the people or the groups that work in these different sectors that we defined on the other side. So you can say we have investors, we have R&D, we have innovators, we have product, we have planning, we have partners again. We have, when we move more towards sort of starting to offer something to the market, of course, we are marketing, sales, the CX, customer experience people needs to be on board. The customers, of course, moving into delivery of the service, who is working there, moving into making sure we have more money in the end of the day than we had before, accounting, invoicing, those type of people. And then in the end, the last part, which will be analytics and learning, this is where we try to harvest the knowledge and figure out what happened. And maybe there are some reporting that needs to be done to authorities as well. So this is really figuring out who are the people. And once you have that, then you can do what I at least think is the most important, sort of interesting thing with this way of thinking and doing the maps. We press play. And when things start, who talks to who? And what happens? Is this a loop, or is it an order? Is it something that is reoccurring or iterative, or is it more of something that is just done and then you ship it further on? What are these interactions and how come? And here we can see that maybe some of the people that we thought were popping up in one sector pop up again, or weren't really active there because they pop up earlier or later. So this is a way of trying to capture the dynamics and understand how these things are connected. And then we can move on with moving into stabilizing this a bit more, looking maybe what are the capabilities or what do these people need in order for them to be able to do their work, and move ourselves into internal capabilities. It's something that I did not do in the beginning, but I do more now, after hooking up with you, Milan, and getting more into this customer journey thinking and external views of this, is to make sure we get the customers way through this, and how we can want to interact with them during the journey to make sure that we provide things that are relevant for them, and also something we can offer. So this is really a fast one, and I really urge you to get a paper and do some scribbling and see what you find. So it doesn't need to be fancy, doesn't need to be super big in the beginning. And if you have capability maps or processes, don't look at them before you start. But once you've scribbled for a while, they can be sort of a key to what are the continents, I sometimes refer to, in your map that you want to add. And then it's ongoing work.
Yeah, and when I scribbled this one, I deliberately, set the stroke to a little thicker, so it's really like a napkin with a Sharpie or something, right? So not too much detail. Then here it gets into a little bit more detail. You might have noticed that actually the sectors changed. So here we had a few more sectors that are basically the same that Annika was describing before. But as you evolve the map, that might change. You might say, actually, this is a better core story with only 4 steps, because that's how people think about it. And it doesn't have to be 100% correct. It doesn't have to be literally everything here happens literally before everything there. It's just a way to represent a kind of complex dynamic and movement in a linear fashion in order to make the map. It's really in order to make the sectors, to make the geography. It's not trying to 100% accurately describe what's going on. And if you look into geographical maps and you look at the different projections and what's wrong with them, especially, you see that they have the same problem. It's never, because you can't actually map a ball on a flat surface without losing something. And the same, of course, goes for an enterprise. Maybe it's even worse. So just try, take a cup of coffee, take a napkin, try to start finding a core story that explains why are we here, how are we operating, and also what are we doing for our customers. And as you saw in the beginning, we keep it very simple. We have some people and some arrows between them. So in edgy terms, that's really, you have basically the story, you have people, and then you have something going on in between them. It's very simple. It's almost like a stakeholder map. And then as we move into more details, we can serve ourselves in the whole palette of edgy elements. So we can add, for example, capabilities. We can add purposes. We can look at the journey and the tasks that people have. We can look into products. But maybe we do that while still staying in napkin mode, still staying in sketch mode. So this is a version of the Milky Way that we do a lot at EDA, actually, in our projects. Usually from a consulting perspective, our customers tell us, okay, there's something wrong today, and we want things to change, and it should be better tomorrow. Cool. This Milky Way shows that, right? So this left side shows what's wrong today. Oh, it's hard to plan and expensive. The customers are complaining. Disconnected experience breaks down. Rail just can't compete.
You can really see how unconnected everything is. Just small islands scattered.
Yeah, and we use some icons here, but really only on a very high level, saying, in the corporate headquarters, we do this. And we have the stations, the infrastructure. We have these apps that we make. And we have capabilities here, right? So all these little dots here, we're thinking, these are capabilities, but we don't say which ones. It's really just, and we don't really know how many. It's just on a very high level saying what's wrong today. Resources are spread too thin. There's a gap between product and infrastructure planning, between sales and marketing. And we are today operating basically as a legacy operator. When we shift into the future, implementing certain changes like customer experience research, journey management, maybe acquiring a startup that has figured things out on a customer interaction level, maybe transforming some of our organization and operations. What will it look like? Things are better connected. You see that they form some kind of web where capabilities are actually talking to each other. We changed the purpose, we evolved it. We are building now leading travel products rather than looking at the national infrastructure. We add this green mobility first choice as a goal. We want to become this sustainable alternative to air travel. How do we do that? What will our customers say tomorrow? Better than flying? Or it just works. I mean, of course, it's an ambition, but this is one way to use the Milky Way at a very high level. And you have here also some products that connect our capabilities to certain key moments in our customer journey. So really on a very high level in sketch mode, so that people think, this is still a draft, right? It's something I can contribute to. Adding some visual cues for the story so that people don't just see text and lines and arrows, and deciding very consciously where do you add these, like what elements are the most important, and how can we as a metaphor on the map show the transition from today's problems to tomorrow's opportunities and solutions. And then you might want to start a workshop when people looked at this map a little bit more and state, so how do we do that? So you can start from the inside out, which is the classic capability and architecture-driven approach to Milky Way mapping, basically looking at who's doing what's going on. As we move through our core story, take some post-its, can be physical or virtual post-its, like in this case, using the Miro template for Edgy, and just say, okay, who's doing what? We have product management, we have to manage the capacities. It's quite empty still, but we are getting there. We're deciding that portfolio management happens rather in this gap in the bottom. Operational analysis is rather after we went through the cycle. Defining wanted change, developing products is rather in the beginning. We can also combine that with a customer perspective, as Annika was saying. So we have maybe here two segments, a business and a vacation passenger. What are they going through? Again, a little bit more detailed than before, kind of naming what's going on. Maybe some differences, like a business passenger might not book their travel themselves. It might be someone else for them. So it's not part of their journey. And then one thing that's really important in journeys, we always see journeys that say, everything is great. People find us, people use us. They're super happy. Everything goes well. And they tell all their friends. No, what is when things go wrong? We have problems operationally. We have last-minute changes. You miss your connection. Your train is cancelled. It's overcrowded. How can we make things better when things are not going smoothly? And this is where actual really great customer experience happens. How do you develop resilience and actually recover gracefully from things going wrong? Which is where you need to connect these things. We need to understand when things go wrong in this customer journey, what are the capabilities that are involved? What is really important as we do that? What are the products and services, and how are they connected to the capabilities as we go through our operations? And also, how can we continuously learn from what happened to our customers and our interactions with customers, and then prepare a better next cycle, continuously improve. And so this is a Milky Way map that is, the post-it style, basically, still saying it's a draft, it's not set in stone, it's not a diagram, it's a whiteboard, it's not a sketch, so you don't have to know how to sketch. It's important, not everyone is comfortable with sketching, but a lot of people are comfortable taking post-its, putting them on the wall, moving them around, and this is an invitation to collaboration. You can also make things a bit more orderly and, for example, have your journey more like a blueprint journey on top, products underneath, who is responsible in the organization, what are the capabilities that are involved, and even maybe sync this with the service blueprints. I stole this one from Aero, from the Edgy Cookbook. Because he has examples for everything. Hey, Arrow, thank you. But yeah, this is an example. So maybe this blueprint is the first part, and then there's another one for later, and there might be a special one for degraded situations and recovery. So, and the Milky Way ties them together and gives context and gives you an overview.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that it's not like we're, at least I'm not driving that we should do everything in the Milky Way mode. It's more, how can we connect things and then understand and then go back to the different special models that can be more rich when it comes to detailing things that we want to know more about. But the point is, with the Milky Way, you can connect things and see dependencies that are really hard to see once you're doing one aspect at the time. I think that is also something. So there is this dual thing of knowing when to go in the big mode and knowing when to go into a more specialized type of modeling. So it is a balance here that you need to find out. But once you're starting to go back and forth, it's really, really a rich way of, or something that gives you a rich understanding of what is in play and also what you need to pay attention to when you do the more detailed things.
Yeah. So this is an invitation to map your galaxy and upgrade to galaxy class, like this starship here. It's really yours. It's difficult to map the Milky Way. This is an attempt actually by someone who had a lot of time, I think, to map the Milky Way, or actually a part of it. This is only the Alpha Quadrant, if you know Star Trek a little bit. So you have the Romulans, the Federation, the Cardassians, the Klingons. And so, this is a map that speaks to a lot of people that know this view on the Milky Way. The challenge is basically to find a map that speaks to your audience, find a way to come up with sectors, with movements, with a depiction that works for them. This is also an invitation to get in touch with us at hello@intersection.group if you want to try this, use this, contribute to it, review our draft content in our sandbox. So please write us at this email, and then we will give you access to the conference, and you can we will have a conversation. And I think it looks like we have 4 minutes for questions, which has never happened to us, so that's great.
Well, we're speedy. I don't know if anybody has anything in the specific.
There were a few questions. So one question is from Raymond. What is the? I have to find it actually, but basically, why are we adding icons when Archimate is currently removing icons? And so my answer would be, it's not at all the same kind of icons. In Edgy, you have in total 16 elements, so it's much less than Archimate. And it's even simpler if you just keep this in the kitchen under the hood and you just expose people to the facets only. So then it's 3 + 3. It's 3 facets and 3 intersections. So 6. And you might have noticed that the icons we are using are not icons per element type, but we are giving every capability an icon without necessarily telling people that these are capabilities. It's just what we are doing. We are giving every customer task or journey step an icon, again, without going into, what's the difference? It's just a representation of what's going on, what matters here at this point. And so the goal is to communicate better and to make it easier to read and relate to by adding visual communication rather than trying to, expose the meta model or any kind of structure behind the map to people who are not really interested in that.
And it's really a way of making, if I may say, less boxy. So with an icon, you invite to the understanding of what it is, but you also invite to how do I interact with it, or what do I get from it, and so on. Instead of being very formal of input and output and those type of things. So it is I think it's a friendlier way of sharing what we actually mean, and it's a richer way of connecting to people in conversations, because this is conversations that we want to drive, so we would know better on how things can be connected if we want to improve.
And I think a question for you, Annika, from Roger. how do you maintain the data or the metadata between all these views?
Well, in our map, it's super. There is a big Visio diagram that my colleague is keeping track of, and he's the one doing the changes. And as we've been working with this model over the years, things are not changing that much. So that's another thing with this type of modeling. If you get it kind of right, it's very, very stable. And this is something that also sort of has been driving this way of thinking, because to me it seems like every question gets a new diagram because you want to see it a bit differently. But if we find the core geography in something that is sort of hooking up to things that we think are important, such as the purpose and the different ambition levels and how things are connected, then the administration of this is not very much. It is during building it, but my experience is it stabilizes fairly quickly if you allow it to stabilize, if you allow yourself to have this type of geography thinking. That's the sort of the thing in the sort of the core thing, and connect things to it.
Yeah, and I just want to mention that I'm super impressed by Frederick doing this kind of beautiful map in Visio. I don't know how he's doing that. And I also want to mention that Lubna and Frederick, and Lubna is here, hi Lubna, are working on Edgy in Visio. So if you are using Visio for some reason, then there will be stencils and templates to use Edgy in Visio.
Yeah. And I hope that we have given you some new ideas and some tangible ways of trying, either try something you've heard before, but really trying it, or if you haven't seen this before, get into another way of thinking.
Well, if you want more background, also I really recommend looking into the interviews that Elise has been doing with Annika in the Verbonden.
You're right.
What's it called? Podcast.
Yes.
So there, if you just Google, I guess you can just Google Annika's name on your podcast platform, right? And then you should find it with a little bit of history and background on the Milky Way and how it came to be and why it is the way it is and how it relates to enterprise design.
Yeah. And again, reach out if you have questions or want to discuss. We're really eager for feedback and also thoughts on how this can be, find its way out into other contexts and other situations.
All right. Thank you so much for joining today. That's it.
Thank you.
See you in the next session.
Yeah. See you and have a really nice evening. And thanks for joining.
Yeah. Thanks, Annika.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.